It's so crazy to think Elden Ring has already been out for 2 years. And after all this time, I finally got around to beating the game. And today I'm going to give you guys an honest review of what I think about Elden Ring. So let's go ahead and jump into the video, guys. Now, 2 years ago, this game took the gaming community by storm, and for good reason. And in this video, we're going to kind of break down why each boss in Elden Ring is either a triumph or a test of patience. So grab your flask of Crimson Tears and let's get started. Now to start off, Elden Ring offers a rich and expansive open world. It seamlessly blends the amazing lore of Elden Ring and Dark Souls with a fresh, mystical environment. The lands between have so many secrets and challenges, and of course some of the most unforgettable boss encounters in gaming history. So let's talk a little bit about all the main bosses in the game and why they make this game so great and the lore so amazing. Starting off with Margit, the Fell Omen. This boss sets the tone for the challenging yet rewarding journey ahead in this game. His unpredictable attack patterns and relentless aggression are pretty much a wake-up call, especially for me, someone who has never played a Souls-like game before Elden Ring. This set the tone and I thought I would never beat it, to be honest. But after a little patience and learning the timing, Margit actually was not that hard to beat, but it does show the game's difficulty curve. If you go through the beginning stage of the game, it's really not that hard, but once you get to Margit, the game jumps up and is like, we are Souls-like, and you're gonna see that right now. But it makes sure you understand the game beforehand. And then we get to Godric the Grafted. Godric is a visually stunning and mechanically complex boss. His grotesque appearance and multiple limbs and the ability to graft a dragon onto himself creates something from nightmare. The fight itself is a test of adaptability, as Godric's phases require different strategies. I mean, he has the first part where he's jumping at you. At the beginning, he just does some normal attacks. It's nothing crazy. You just gotta learn the timing. And then he's like, oh, a dragon. Chop off the head, put it on the arm, launches fire at you. And you kind of have to adapt to the boss and learn the quirks and what you have to do, when to dive, when to duck, when to block, when to hit. And to be honest, it's just learning the movement. Once you learn the movement, the bosses actually become relatively easy. Especially Godric, some of his moves are just so projected. You can see them coming from a mile away, so it wasn't too hard. I ended up beating Godric on my first try, so it wasn't too crazy. Margit, I was like, oh stink, this is gonna be hard. Godric, I was like, okay, this is manageable. I'm starting to learn the game a little bit. Now, to be honest, I kind of over leveled for the Rennala Queen of the Full Moon fight. So the first two are kind of like normal bosses. They use axes, they use weapons. It's not that hard. Rennala is more of a mage build, so you have to make sure you get in as close as possible, as quick as possible, because she's gonna shoot lasers at you. She's gonna summon dragons. She's gonna summon the Bloodhound. She's gonna summon all these different things to fight you. To be honest, it is a visual treat. I mean, the whole idea of Rennala was so cool. And when you walk in and see all these creepy people with no legs singing and chanting and reading books, then they start throwing books at you, chandeliers start falling from the sky. It's a really awesome atmosphere, to be honest. And then you go into the most beautiful place to fight this lady for her next stage. And this battle really pays homage to the Elden Ring legends and lore. But the problem I had with Rennala was I was too over leveled. So I think I hit her 3 times in her first stage. She was done. Then I went to the next stage. I got wailed on by the dragon the first time because I had no clue she was gonna summon it. But after I knew, I beat her the next time, and it literally took me like 5 minutes. So I wish I would not have over leveled, because it was really, to be honest, a fun battle, and I wish I would have been in it a little bit longer. And then we get to Radahn. Now, we obviously know there's a festival and everything is going on before we go and fight this colossal behemoth. And the whole lore about how he's trapped and has to eat his comrades and his enemies to survive, and he howls at the moon. I mean, it's insane. The lore of Elden Ring makes me wish they wrote a book, because I would read it. I don't even care about reading, but if they wrote a book, I would read it. If they made a movie, I would watch it today. The story of Radahn is like one of the coolest stories in the game. And this is where you finally feel like the difficulty spike comes. Now, the great thing about Radahn is you can do all these different summons. It makes it drastically easier. And to be honest, I did that. I'm not like some Souls expert. I told you this is my first game. So I summoned as much people as I could. I summoned the Jar, the Lion, all these different people. But it was just so cool. Now, I did think it was hysterical, his little horse that he rides on. I thought that was too funny, and I don't know why they did that to him. If he would have had a giant horse, it would have been probably cooler, but it was pretty funny. But this boss, it did take me a little while. I think it took me 3 or 4 tries because, like I said, I did summon people and they would fight on my behalf, and then I'd just come behind them on the horse and hit him in the back, and it was pretty simple because I went with the samurai build and I had bleed, so it was pretty quick. But the feeling of having that army behind you and going in, it just was like an adrenaline rush. You're like, oh, I got people with me, it'll be fun. But he still would annihilate them all and still would annihilate you. And to be honest, I think he was probably my least fun boss at this time, just because he just throws out a lot of attacks that are just AoE kind of annoying attacks. And I didn't have a lot of fun with him, but the whole story behind him made me really enjoy the fight itself. Now we get to the true spectacle of Elden Ring. We get to Melania. Melania is not arguably, it more than likely is one of the hardest bosses in this game. Her graceful and yet deadly combat style and life-stealing ability make a single mistake cost you your life, pretty much. You cannot make a mistake in this fight, really. Just the crazy way she moves and the crazy way she slings her sword and the crazy ability she has, and then her phase 2. You have to have some precise dodging and perfect timing. And this is where the Souls-like comes in. You have to try again and again and again. And I don't even know how many times I attempted this before I beat it. But to be honest, I would never want to do this fight again. I would not want to fight Melania ever again in my life, because it took so much time from my life. Now, don't get me wrong. You obviously can do things to make the Melania fight easier. You can go get different flasks, you can get different swords, different weapons, and it will become easier. But I just went in with my dex build, with my samurai sword, with my bleed, and it took me forever to do this because I could never stagger her. I could never do any real damage to her. I just had to chip at her slowly over time. Now, I know I did skip over a few of the other bosses, so I'm going to go over those real quick before we get into the last main bosses. Now, we had the Red Wolf of Radagon. This was so easy for me. I literally used my blood slash like 3 times and he was done. I think it took me 2 tries. He really was not that hard. But like I said, whenever I fought Renala, I was already over leveled, so it probably would have been harder, but I was like level 50 or 60 or something by the time I fought them, so it was not hard at all. Now, Godfrey, the Golden Shade, I don't really count as like a main boss because it's not there, obviously, but it was pretty difficult. I did defeat him pretty quickly. It wasn't too hard. Now, the Fire Giant, everybody talks about the Fire Giant and how annoying he is. And not the annoyingness that it's hard to beat him, to be honest. Just the fact that you have to do so much damage and it takes so much time. It's not even a fun fight. You can just ride around in your horse, to be honest, and just hit him and hit him and hit him and hit him until eventually he dies. Now, luckily I did have a blood dex build, so it was pretty simple to beat him. I think I beat him on my 2nd or 3rd try, but it was just not fun. It was anything with the giant people is not really that fun because it's not fast paced. You can't get in close. You can't stagger that easily, and I would not rate this as one of my favorite, but it adds to the lore. It makes it more interesting. It does add some difficulty to it, but nothing compared to the Godskin duo. Now, separate, they were difficult for me. Now, the one with the scythe wasn't too hard. I think I beat him on my 2nd or 3rd try, but the fat one, oh my gosh, I don't even know his name, but he took me so long, so stinking long. And together, it's like I almost wanted to fight Melania instead, because he would roll his fat belly over me. The other one would keep fighting. Anytime you have to fight 2 people at the same time, it's so difficult. It's so hard. I would not wish this on my worst enemy, to fight the Godskin duo. It was not fun. It was just a lot of moves being thrown at you that you have to dodge. Now, this is definitely one of the coolest bosses in the game. Malekith, the Black Blade, he was pretty hard, and his fast movements and everything made it a little difficult to defeat him, but I enjoyed it, having to dodge all those attacks, and just the coolness of the boss itself made it worth the fight. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like one of the coolest bosses in the game. It was just awesome. I loved fighting Malekith. Gideon, we all hate Gideon. Gideon is the worst. Gideon he needs to die. I thought he was my friend. He was not my friend. He betrayed me. He was the worst, and I was just happy. It was a satisfying ending for him. I would do it again and again and again because he's a loser. Sorry, I was getting a little emotional there. Now we get to the last two. We get to Radagon. Radagon was one of the, I wouldn't say he was one of the hardest bosses. He wasn't extremely hard, especially in his first phase before he becomes the Elden Beast. He was not hard at all. I think it took me like 3 or 4 tries to get him out of his first phase. But whenever I get to the Elden Beast, I kept losing because of that one move that was like almost impossible to dodge. I don't know what it's called, but the Elden Beast was just lame. I mean, after fighting all these amazing bosses, and this is the final boss, a blob of space. It literally just looks like a blob of space. It looks like they drew the body, just copied some space, painted it in there, and then drew some gold lines, and they were like, oh, this is the final boss of Elden Ring. I did not enjoy the fight. I did not enjoy the final boss. I thought it was kind of anticlimactic. Now, it was insane when you're like, oh, I beat Radagon. I must have beat the game. And you're like, oh no, another boss. And you would think it's going to be like this giant dragon that's coming out of his chest or something. But no, it's a blob of space. Now, don't get me wrong, because of Elden Ring's final boss, I'm not going to say it's bad by any means. I actually did not hate the final battle, not as much as Melania. To be honest, I got trapped in this game for dozens and dozens of hours. I lately have not been able to play a game longer than probably 5 hours, and then I get kind of bored. Because I'm having to do all these games for my videos, I get kind of bored relatively quickly when I play games outside of this. But I found myself coming back to Elden Ring, playing it when I don't have to make content. I was playing it all the time, and I was having a good time exploring. I'm like, oh, I found this cool cavern. Oh, I found this cool video online about how I can get this cool build. All the different builds, everything you can do in this game. I understand why it won Game of the Year. I would give it Game of the Year in 2022. I would give it Game of the Year this year because it is such a masterpiece. I just wish there were more mods because I've been trying to do a modded series. There's not a lot of good mods for it. But outside of that, best game I think I've played in my entire life. I love it so much. I would recommend it to anybody. But let me know what you guys think about Elden Ring in the comments down below. If you guys have any cool builds, let me know in the comments down below. I'll try them out on a video or maybe a live stream. But I would like to try out some cool builds. I'm still playing this. I'm gonna do New Game Plus and everything because I loved it so much. But thank you guys for tuning in this video, and I hope you have a great day.